See a couple more people come in, but I think we can get started. Welcome back, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm glad you made it all back. I know this is always a kind of a tough session right after lunch. You just ate, and it is Thursday, so I know that you already received a lot of information during all these different sessions. And I've even heard some people say that it's kind of we've been drinking from the fire hose, but I just want to show you, it's not that we didn't warn you, because these signs are up everywhere. So I also understand that probably by now you've started thinking, with all that information which I received about the new capabilities of the features of Windows 8, what can I do with that, right? How do I come up with the next big idea? And how do I become the guy, as Jensen mentioned it, is among you the guy who's going to be very rich as a result of that? What are you going to do to be more creative than the guy who's been sitting next to you watching what you type on your screen for the ideas? So you need to do better than that. It's totally understandable why you would do that. Because the potential, the opportunity is, of course, humongous. It's huge. A couple times the numbers were already mentioned, right? I mean, you heard the number 1 billion mentioned several times, but how many people customers are using Windows and PCs and your products? Imagine you can tap into that. That'd be unbelievable. The ecosystem itself has grown tremendously over the time, right? When we look all the way back to the beginning of certification programs from a Windows side, we were much smaller. The ecosystem itself was much smaller. The number of customers was much smaller. And for us to be able to write down how we think we should be working together was kind of easy, actually. We just have to, we wrote a book, actually, which we published. And in there, we basically said, okay, these are the things that we're doing on our side, and we hope that these are the things you're doing on your side, and then we'll be working together. Today, with that incredibly growing ecosystem for Windows, and with the incredible growth in opportunities and capabilities that you have in your products, it is inherently much more complex. It's just much more difficult, and I think it's only going to, that ecosystem itself is only going to grow much bigger. So if you take a step back again and look at that opportunity, you got that 1 billion people using Windows. Dennis Flanagan in his talk said that there's about 10 billion different type of USB devices being used. The number of applications out there is in the hundreds of millions. And now imagine that. How do you test that? How do you make sure that your product works on that unique combination, that unique product that customer has created for itself? That is just incredibly hard. I mean, of course, we cannot ask you to test all these different combinations. Right? If you would try to calculate that on one of the old calculators, the answer would be E. You can't figure it out how big it is. It is absolutely huge. But we have the responsibility that if we bring our products to market, that they work. The thing is that we sell components of a scenario which an end user wants to start using. I'll use an example of a webcam. If you sell a webcam, that customer is not buying the webcam, he is buying the possibility to chat to his mom who lives on the other end of the continent. That's what he's buying. And to deliver that scenario, there's many things that need to fall in place for it to work. Right? The video streaming needs to be good, the USB connection needs to be good, the application which is using needs to be good and need to accept that camera input, etc., etc., etc. If one of those components breaks, that single component that you may have sold it is useless. It doesn't work. And we got to make sure that those investments which you're making on your side pay off, right? You make a lot of investments in adding capabilities and functionalities to your products. We make on our side a lot of investments in capabilities and features to our product, and we need to make sure that we find a way to make sure that those investments pay off, when in the end, the customer is trying to combine those in a unique combination. Windows 8 is actually going to be expanding on that, because you've heard many talks talk about the app contracts. So an application or a device can start adding functionality without those devices or applications actually knowing from each other. It's in fact possible that you create a product, you deliver it to the market, And then 2 years later, something else will be added to Windows and that PC, which will enhance the functionality of your product without any additional investment necessary on your side. But what you do need to make sure is when you start selling that product, before you do that, you make sure that it does work correctly with inside of that Windows ecosystem, because then it can take advantage of that extra functionality being added over time, and that's incredibly powerful. So, more than ever, I think, we need to have something in place that makes sure that we have some kind of engineering agreement between all of us here in the room and with all of you and Microsoft. And that is the reason why Windows has a certification program. That is that exact reason, to make sure that we can all benefit and take advantage of that ever-expanding and already huge ecosystem. Now, it's not too long ago, actually, before I joined Microsoft, I was sitting among you as one of the partners, so I've been on the receiving end as well. And I know how it is if you receive a document or an email or having to review something from Microsoft which says on the top, requirements. And then the list goes on. And I know that you have your own development schedules and you know your own timelines, your own milestones to hit, and then these documents come. And you have to start reading that, and you have to make sure that you meet those requirements. Sometimes those requirements are easy to meet, other times it's harder to do that. So I understand what that is to be on your side. What I've tried to do over the last 2 years, basically, together with my team, go figure out how do we make that easier for you to participate in this program. Because only then, basically, we will all win from this. So let's take a look at the agenda. I'm going to take one step back and take a look at what we have learned during the Windows 7 timeframe from the Windows 7 logo program. There's going to be feedback in there from you. We're going to take a look at how that feedback actually was translated into goals and initiatives which we want to take for Windows 8. And then at the end of the presentation, I'm going to show you what steps you can take to get ready. Because essentially, at the end of the time, we just want to be sure that we can be ready at the same time to launch Windows 8 and to launch your products and applications and devices with it. So that's going to be the deck. Going to start off with thanking you for two things. One is for the, and I see some of you smile, think the presentation's over, that's short. No, the doors are closed. I want to thank you for two reasons. One is for the incredible participation in the program. More partners than ever made the decision to invest in the certification program. More partners than ever decided they're going to participate, test their products, to put that logo in the end on their products. And that's incredible. More products are available to customers which carry that Windows logo, so they can be assured that they work together with the other products. So that's absolutely fantastic, and I want to thank you for that. The second thing I want to thank you is that I told you when I was on the partner side, I sometimes gave feedback to Microsoft that the program wasn't always as perfect as what it could be. And you are just as open, honest, and direct with your feedback. And that feedback is critically important to us. The certification programs basically go through the same steps as any other feature of Windows. You have to understand what your customer think about the program or think about the features that you offer. So that feedback is critically important. We thought it was so important that we actually asked the Gartner Group to go out to you and just ask the questions. What do you think? Is it good? Is it bad? If there are parts which are bad, what are those parts? What do you think should be done about it? So we went out, the Gartner Group actually went out for us in the United States, but also in Asia and in Europe to collect this type of feedback. And I'm quite sure if you read those quotes which are on these snippets on the screen, you probably think to yourself, that's exactly what I said. Right? There's some which are, and actually, to be honest, those are some of the things which even I said when I was still sitting in between you. Right? And let's read out a couple. I don't know if consumers grasp the purpose of the logo program. I tried to flip the program to be more end-user focused. The requirements are online, but it can change at any time, and I kind of need to keep track of that, and I don't know when they change. There's no real connection between a requirement or how it's being tested. Sometimes I fail a test and I don't even know what requirement I'm failing because of that. Or we don't do a good enough job about communicating what test cases are being added, or the documentation is not good. So what I'd like to ask you to do is just pick out a couple of these things, put them in your head, remember them, and throughout the presentation, which I'm going to show you, is how we're going to be addressing this feedback. The feedback is critically important to us. We didn't only listen to you and asked you what you thought, we also went back to the end user and asked him what he thought about that. And again, we did this in the United States, we also did this in Europe, and we did this in the Asia region. The answers are basically exactly the same across the planet. There's some small changes, and I'll point this out as we go along this slide. So the question which we asked is, what do you think the logo should stand for? What do you, customer, when you go into retail and you see a product which features that logo, what do you think it should mean? Or if you buy a server or an application, or you go to your reseller to buy products, what do you think that logo should mean? What should it stand for? What should be behind that sticker? And the results are actually quite interesting. Let's start with the first one there. The OS is Microsoft Windows. That sounds quite obvious, but you need to look at the time when we did this research. That was the time when the netbooks actually came aboard. That was the time when a customer could go into retail and not know exactly what type of operating system would be sitting on those systems. So he was using that sticker, that logo, to make that choice, basically, which one he was going to buy. And that's quite unique, actually. That's a change which we've seen since some time. This is one of those things where we asked this question in China. The answer was actually slightly different. The answer was yes, it should be Microsoft Windows, but they added the word genuine. And that was not because Microsoft added that word, but that was because the feedback from customers was that. They were looking at that logo and assuming that that meant that on that system, a genuine version of Windows was installed. So customers were actually looking for that logo and making purchase decisions based on that. We actually did further research to understand how much value they attribute to that sticker, because we have had many discussions, actually. Should we remove the sticker? Is that a cleaner look, etc.? But in fact, it turns out that customers actually appreciate to see that sticker when they make that purchase decision. It tells them, gives them confidence about the decision which they're making. So let's look at the couple of the next ones there. And I grouped them into the same color because they're basically saying the same thing. The first one, when they see that logo, they expect to have compatibility across devices, hardware and software, that also feature that Windows logo. And that's exactly what I pointed out earlier, right? I mean, if I buy that webcam and I want to use it to do video chatting, all these different things that I need to do that should work together. And that's what the customer is hoping and expecting to get when he sees and buys a product that features that logo. More than 21% of customers answered that way. The second one from the green section is performance and reliability. Initially, the certification program was actually mostly focused on compatibility, right? The HCT, hardware compatibility testing. Over time, actually, it has evolved, and more we started adding tests which confirm that the reliability of your product together with other products is high, and also performance. Some basic performance are being tested. Customers indicate that they care about that too. They want that product to be very performant and be highly reliable. I don't think there's any surprise at that answer. 20% of customers answered it that way. The OS is optimized for a premium end user experience, or it runs without problem. Basically, they're saying the same thing, right? They want to have that experience to be really, really good, which is pretty much the same as what the others are. That's why I combined these answers, all those 4 answers, into one, and it adds up to 66%. Now, what the important part of this is, 66% of customers actually tell you that the logo, that they want the logo to stand for something you are actually already doing. So, my conclusion after these 2 slides is that, 1, from your perspective, there is a lot we can improve. From a customer perspective, we're doing the things that they're asking for. We're on the right path, but that doesn't mean we can always, we cannot improve it. So, translation into goals. 3 main goals, which we set ourselves when we started this. The first one is that, of course, we want to make sure that at the end of the day, there's a great experience for end users with your products, combined with ours, combined with the products that your partners are making who are sitting in the room here, but also for developers. So we're not just looking at this program from an end user perspective, but also having a great experience for you as a developer. I'll come back to that later. The second one is directly related to those comments which you made on that, through that research and directly to us. The certification process itself needs to be much more streamlined. It just needs to be much easier to participate in it. So we get that, and we made that one of our big goals. The third one is we want to make sure that everything is streamlined in such a way that it is possible for all of us to be ready at the same time. You want your products to be ready at the time that you can enjoy basically that first wave of sales and that excitement which is going to happen when a new OS is being launched. So we've got to make sure that we all can be ready at the same time. So that's what we set as our third goal. As a next step, what we've done is take those 3 goals and start translating them into initiatives. What do we need to do in order to achieve these goals? So the rest of the deck is basically going through each one of those goals and show you what we've done. Let's start with the first one. Great experiences for end users and developers by anchoring ourselves in end user scenarios. Because again, that's what you sell, that's what we sell, and that is what customers buy. So what does that translate to? Let's take a look back at how we did things during the Windows 7 timeframe when we designed that certification program. There's a set of requirements which were created by the individual feature teams. And we had feature teams which are focusing on the display, on storage, device fundamentals, system fundamentals, and each one of them came up with a list of things they needed to put in place to make sure that their code was going to work together with your code or your device. The next step then was to translate those set of requirements, those engineering agreements that need to be put in place, and write up a set of tests that confirm that we're actually meeting those agreements, meeting those requirements. Unfortunately, we didn't have a very good way to show you which of those requirements is linked to what test. And that's the feedback which you provided is loud and clear. It's just not easy to understand if you fail a certain test, which requirement is it actually pointing back to, or vice versa. For Windows 8, we're going to change that completely. And the first immediate thing you just see, it all starts with those experiences, those end-user scenarios. The way Windows 8 is being planned and designed is not by starting with a huge list of features that we want to go implement. It starts with what is the end-user scenarios that we want to accomplish? What do we want to deliver to those end users? If we know that, we immediately know what type of features, functionality, capabilities we need to create in order to achieve and deliver that end-user scenario. And the certification program to achieve the logo is going to follow that exact same method. We're taking those exact same end-user scenarios. So we made very thoughtful decisions about what scenarios we want to enable and maximize using Windows 8. And now the certification program is going to build right on top of that. We know what features and capabilities we need to have on the Windows side. Since those scenarios are in most cases not complete with our products being included in it, we also know what kind of features and capabilities we hope that your products will add to the system. Once we know that, we can then translate that into these engineering agreements which we need to write up, which we refer to as the requirements. And then, as a last step, the tests are being created to validate that we're meeting those requirements, which means we're implementing the features correctly, which means we will deliver that end user scenario to customers correctly. The kit itself, the hardware certification kit, is also going to be changing, and it's going to adopt this way of thinking. During the Windows 7 timeframe, right now, we call it the Windows Logo Kit. And the way that works is that when you start testing a product, you actually need to define or select which category of products you're going to be testing against. And we had, before that, actually made up a list saying if you as a developer select this category, these tests need to be run. In Windows 8, we're going to change that. In Windows 8, you do not have to select a category of product you're going to be testing. In fact, the kit is going to find out what features you're going to be enabling, what features and capabilities you're going to be adding to the system. Because we know the features, we know which engineering agreements which we would like to have around that, and therefore we know what kind of tests we need to use to test that those requirements are being met. So I'll use an example here. If you are producing a multifunction printer, that's a really good example. In the old days, you would have to say, this is a printer, and then go through the kit and test it and create that submission log. And then once you've done that, you pass those, you would have to do it again and say, now I'm going to be certifying this as a scanner or whatever additional functionality that the product would have. And you would have to go through a lot of the same tests again, actually, which meant that a lot of tests were actually duplicated, and the time it took you to test was basically ×2. In case of the new kit, we're not going to ask you, is this a printer, is this a scanner? We'll just, if you declare that you have printing capabilities and that you have scanning capabilities or you have USB capabilities, we're going to line up the tests to go test these things. So that test pass will be dramatically reduced and will be much, much shorter. So let's take a look at two examples here. The first example, I kind of already mentioned that. That's that video chat example. You, as a developer, created a webcam. You created a piece of software with that to do the video chatting over the internet. And you sell that scenario. So based on that, some webcams will have additional capabilities. Maybe you decide that you want to turn your webcam into an external USB hub as well. Could be, or whatever functions you have. In the old days, we would not actually know that you would do that, and we would have no way to test that, which meant that you would be responsible, or you probably want to make sure that you run additional tests to make sure that that USB capability would work. Right now, what we're doing is we're looking at the capabilities which you declare basically through PnP, and as a result of that, we know which features you offer, we know what requirements we have around those, and we know what type of tests we need to run against those. That will go fully automatic. Let's look at another example. Watching an HD movie. This is an example which there's kind of a different angle to this, why I'm using this. What you see basically is the same concept. It starts with the user scenario, and I'm sure that you've seen all that. We all do it ourselves, right? Watching Netflix or Hulu or YouTube on our PCs. I've seen people do it at the airport, sitting right next to the wall, being plugged in. Lots of people do it. And they have a certain expectation of how that end user, how that scenario will work, how good that experience will be. And what is critical that you recognize is that in that top bar, product is actually missing. It doesn't say what type of product you are going to be delivering that end user scenario with. Because we believe that there's a set of core scenarios that users expect to get, and they don't care actually if they're buying a really small and light and optimized for power product, or if they're buying a high-end gaming rig with lots of power. It's not that all of a sudden, because they have chosen a product which is optimized for mobility, that they think it's okay for the video just to be bad if they watch an HD movie. In fact, this is one of the things that we believe is behind some of the issues which we saw when netbooks were introduced. we kind of defined, okay, this is a product category where we believe that customers are going to be doing different things with. In fact, it turned out they're not. It's just a smaller PC, and they start doing the exact same things with it. And in some cases, we're unhappy with that. So we have eliminated the product type from defining what those end user scenarios are and what requirements which we need to put in place to make sure that we can actually deliver those end user scenarios. So that's good from end user perspective, but it's also good for you as a developer. Because let's assume that you make a new Metro style app and you target tablet PCs. You spend a lot of time on designing that landscape look, but you also spend a lot of time on that portrait look. Now, it'd be really unfortunate if only like 5% of the tablet would actually support that rotation because they don't implement an accelerometer. That investment which you're making on additional functionality would not be used. In fact, in some cases, you would have to have a whole list of if-then type of statements in your code to figure out what is the product all about? What can the product do? Therefore, what kind of functionality can I add? What can I depend on? What can I expect the product to do? Which is very hard, especially since, as I said, I mean, we have a billion PCs right now. If Windows 8 would sell just as well as Windows 7 would do in the first 2 years, another 500 million be added to that, and they're all different. That makes your life as an app developer really hard. That makes your app life as a device manufacturer really, really hard. So we've got to make sure that we have some kind of predictable platform for you to work on. And that's another reason why product type is excluded from this definition. So, step back. Why do we think anchoring ourselves in end-user scenarios helps all of us? Because it allows us to focus basically on creating those innovative products that deliver these experiences that customers want. We've done an enormous amount of research. We believe we do know exactly what customers are expecting, what they want to see, and we would like that together we can deliver products that actually enhance that experience. Secondly, as I just mentioned, we want to make sure that you as a developer have a consistent and predictable experience developing your apps and your devices. Second one, that is again right back to all those feedback that you gave us about how good or how not so good the tools were. "12 screens. When I first joined the team, I decided, you know what, I'm going to certify a product. So I just took a product which I had on my desk, and I was going to install the kit, and I was going to run it through the kit and making sure that I did everything. And I'll admit to you, I couldn't do it. It's not because the product which I used to certify was not good. No, I just couldn't figure out how to run it through the kit. And these are the steps which I would need to go through, basically, to achieve my goal of certifying a product, to test it. 12 different screens. And that is actually with only one product, one test, and the test always passes. So you kind of had to be a rocket scientist to figure this out. And it's actually led to situations where inside of your companies, you have people who are specialized on doing the logo thing. And you really hope that they never leave, because that would put you in a bad spot. I see people nodding, so sore spot. What I'm going to show you now is how we have taken the WLK 1.6, which is the current kit, and the plans which we have for the kit during the Windows 8 timeframe. 1, 2, 3, done. The UI has completely changed. We have truly stepped back and said, okay, what do you think? What is the workflow process you have to go through to do the certification? Now, I'm not going to ask you to read basically all the text on the screen because it's kind of hard. We actually have a session, an in-depth session to go into that. Greg Rowland will do that tomorrow at 10:30, where he will go into much more detail about the kit. But the basis of how it works is you start a project, and you as a developer are probably very familiar with that. Then you go through a selection process of which operating systems do you want to test or certify your product for. That is Windows 8, you can add Windows 7, you can add Windows Vista. There will be one kit to certify all these different OSs. And then you make a selection of the tests which you want to run. The application, the kit itself actually will make that list for you because it has detected the functionality that you want to add. We know the engineering agreements which we need to have around it. We know the tests which we need to put behind those to validate those. That list is going to be shown, and you can pick and choose. You can do them all, or you can say, you know what, I'm only going to do these two because that's something I'm debugging right now and I need to have more information about. You hit the run button, the test will be run, and then finally you can look at the results, and if they're all good, everything is green, you can package them up and send them off to the portal. So again, please visit the Greg Rowan's presentation to go in more detail there, or visit the hands-on labs which we have in the expo area, which is in the left back-end corner. You can play with it yourself, you can try it out, you can ask lots of questions. Those are the people who actually made the kit. So you gave me an applause, but it's other people who actually did that work. So. The last thing I want to mention about this is that in addition to changing the UI, we also changed the automation actually behind it. In fact, even if you think this UI is too much, you don't have to use any of it. You can develop your own script. If you think you want to do this from PowerShell, you can. You can select which OSs you want to certify for, you can select which tests you want to run, and you can all do that from PowerShell. In fact, I was told you can do it from Fortran, but I haven't met many people who still do that. So the automation changed, UI has changed. Please go check it out. Please try it out. The intent of that automation is to make sure that we can actually integrate this whole certification process into your own quality processes you probably have. And all to kind of streamline that whole process and just make it easier for you to participate in this program. When you're all done, you got that old package, or you want to go and investigate more and understand more about the program, in the past we had a WinQual, or we still have WinQual, we had LogoPoint to communicate some of the requirements, that all these things are actually going to be replaced by the development center, which you've heard other speakers already mention, and that's the to-go-to place basically to get all the information. You will know there about program details, you can read about the requirements, you can download the kits, you can make your submission, you can see if it's passed, you can make decisions about your driver distribution, you can collect your telemetry, et cetera, et cetera. It's all into one place now. So I hope you agree with me that we've made a lot of investments on the tool side, listening to your feedback and just taking that at heart and reacting to that. So the advantages for you, I think they're pretty obvious, right? I mean, the training time will be greatly reduced. I mean, I figured it out in a very short time, and I think it's now a lot easier for you to start working with the kit and start using it. It's possible to give the kit to the developer who's working on the product that eventually need to be certified, and he can run it. He can run the test himself. So by the end that he says the driver is done or the application is done, you already know it's going to pass. The test cycles itself are also going to be a lot shorter. Right? First of all, you can select multiple operating systems, or if you have devices which have much more capabilities than we had in previous categories, it will just do that all in one pass. And that's because we moved away from those predefined test categories. And in the end, what we hope you're going to be looking at, the way you look at the kit actually is a very comprehensive, freely available kit to test your functionality, to make sure that all of that functionality together delivers those end user scenarios we all want to go sell to our customers. The last big goal, broad and timely availability of quality products through synchronization with Windows releases. To be clear, actually the logo program actually never really connected itself clearly to the Windows release cycle. They actually had separate cycles. The OSs was being developed, and sometimes at the same time, sometimes at different times, sometimes during the time that an operating system was in market, we added tests, we added requirements, we changed tests, etc. And that, I think, is one of the things where your feedback came from, like, I need to keep an eye on this website all the time to go figure out what has changed. So what we're going to do is actually we're going to synchronize ourselves with Windows. We're going to follow that exact same path. So just like what you got a developer preview of the operating system and of the hardware, already on that tablet which you received, the application certification kit, the app certification kit, is already preloaded on that. That is the preview, basically, of the kit that we're going to be using to provide the logo to desktop applications. And it's also the exact same kit which we're going to be using to onboard applications into the store. If you haven't seen the presentation from Ted Dworkin about the Windows Store, I advise you to go look that up online, because he goes into more detail about that. But you already have that preview. It is on your system right now. If you go home and start developing, you can actually take that application and run it through the kit and know if you're going to be passing or failing and what debugging you should be doing on that. So we're going to do that basically across the board. We're going to be releasing the requirements and the tests basically in sync with Windows. So when you go home and start reviewing things and start reading up on things and start going through different presentations, we also hope that you will start reading up on the requirements. We will publish those, and the links are actually provided at the end of this presentation. You can start reading those. You can start understanding what we're thinking, how we link them back to those scenarios, what kind of tests are being put in place. You can read all that material. That's all available right now. Shortly after the Build conference, we will also upload the kit itself to that same site, and the link is also included in that, so you can start trying it out. You can start connecting your devices, you can start playing with it, and you can see what happens by the time that Windows 8 comes out. We will also commit to making sure that the final certification tools are available to you long before the RTM, actually. We're basically one milestone ahead of the operating system itself. So by the time the Windows 8 reaches the RC state, the logo program, the certification program, is actually already at the RTM state. So you can start making your submissions and doing your certification at the RC state, which means by the time Windows RTMs, you can also be ready for RTM, and that means we can be ready basically at the same time. There's one thing I want to point out. There are things going to happen over the next years which we don't know about yet. There may be technologies which you come up with which we never thought about. Those technologies may have an impact on other products of your competitors or friends in the room here. There may be technologies which will have an impact on Windows, where we believe we need to take a position on to make sure that it's actually supported across the ecosystem. We need to react to those. But I commit to you that we will do our utmost to make sure that we communicate that to you clearly and early. So how do we think this helps? Well, the main thing is actually that you no longer have to keep an eye on those websites, on those emails and stuff, to make sure that you are up to date, up to speed on what the requirements are, and you can just focus on the stuff that you do best, which is your innovation, your products, your quality, enhancing that. That's really what we hope you want to spend your energy on, and not trying to keep track of what we're changing on our side. That's the number one. The second thing which we hope to achieve is that by the time that we come out with Windows 8 in the RTM phase, that your products are ready, and together we can achieve that 1 + 1 actually equals 8. Because that's when it all comes together. So let's look at the summary. You heard me talk about the feedback that you provided us, some very harsh and some very direct, and that was good, and I hope you will continue doing that. I showed you how we have taken that feedback and translated that into the high-level goals we have. We said we first want to make sure that we have a great experience for end users and for developers. And we've taken some initiative. We put initiatives in place to achieve that. We talked about that we want to streamline the certification experience. It just needs to be easier for you to go through this process. And we've taken steps to achieve that. And finally, we tried to make sure that we have a broad and timely availability of your products together with our products, and to make that possible. So the initiatives, anchoring ourselves in end-user scenarios, so I hope you agree with me that that is the right way to think about our products collectively. We hope you keep in mind that those end-user scenarios are created basically by your product in combinations with lots of other products where you may not know about, and that the certification process is the reason why we have that, why we need to put that in place to make sure that that continues to work. I hope you agree with me that we have done a good job on the tools and trying to make them a lot easier for you to use. And finally, I hope you have seen that by synchronizing ourselves with the Windows release cadence, we make it much more predictable about when things are going to be changing and what you should be doing at what time. Brings me to the last point which we had on the agenda, which is, so what can I do? At EdBuild, I ask you to participate in the sessions which are related to the certification programs. There are several of them. I have a list of them here after this. Of course, if you weren't able to participate in all these sessions, or you had something else, some other session you're also interested in, all of these sessions are being recorded, so when you go back home, you can look at them online and go through them. Please visit the hands-on labs. I know it's a bit of a walk through the expo area because they're all the way in the back, but we've set up machines there which have the kits on them. They're running. They're showing examples of devices going through the certification process, and you can kind of start familiarize yourself already with those kits. And then finally, if you do listen to other presentations, kind of read or listen to those presentations and trying to see what engineering agreements which we want to put in place, because those will eventually translate into those requirements. So please take a look at those other things and understand what requirements are we going to be putting in place. And when you get home, so when we're all done, between now and then the beta time, I told you shortly, or already you have the ACK, so the App Certification Kit is already on your machines. You can use that. The HCK, so the Hardware Certification Kit, will be available on those download links shortly after the Build conference. So please download them, use them, try them, see what you think. Provide us feedback, because also those kits are in that developer preview stage. So tell us what you think. Also read up on those requirements. Those documents will be on those same links. So you can read them up and you understand what kind of expectations we're putting in place and what agreements we need to create between us. And then after beta, to the start of the certification, which I said is going to be the RC time, get trained. I can assure you that the training is going to be a lot shorter, but just make sure that the people who are supposed to be running these kits, because the WLK 1.6, which you know right now, or the WSLK, as you know it right now, will then be retired, and will everything move over to the new kits. And all basically the certification for the Windows 7 or even older operating systems will be handled by the new kits. That's all combined into one. And then when the RC time comes, I hope that you've all run your products through the kit, and basically you're all green, and don't all hit the button at the same time. But when RC comes out, you can start the certification, and then you're kind of done for when Windows RTM comes out. So the related sessions, as I already referred to one of them, introducing the Windows Hardware Certification Kit. That's the session which is tomorrow at 10:30. There will be a lot more detail about how the kit actually works, what the design behind the kit is, how that automation will work. There will be comparisons between the two, and you can start thinking about how you can use that automation inside of your own quality processes. So that's happening tomorrow at 10:30. Then Windows Certification Program Process and Tools. That's the last Chalk Talk actually tomorrow from 2 to 3. A lot of my colleagues who are doing that Chalk Talk, those are the guys basically who made this. And I really advise you to go there and just ask any question you would have about that program, the kit, or anything basically. Anything you have on your mind, that's the place to go talk about that. Those are the guys who can give you immediate answers, or if not, they know who to talk to. The labs, I already mentioned them a couple times. There's a hardware one and there's an application one. Please go see that. And the server software and hardware certification presentation already happened. That was yesterday. But as I said, it is available online, and I hope you will go see that. The last one is that list of things that I'd like you to go click on. The first ones are to download those requirements, both on the hardware side and on the software side. The second one is where you can download the hardware certification kit, the preview of that, the developer preview of that. Server, the same. And then there's the developer dashboard. That's kind of the picture which I showed you, which is then going to be that go-to place for all your questions or information about the programs, the requirements, the downloading kits, et cetera, et cetera. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much. I can take questions now. I will also be available during the break. So thank you very much.
Are we still looking at a server with several clients with various OSs and architectures?
Yeah, the question is if we're still looking at the same type of infrastructure used for the kit on the hardware side, so a server plus multiple clients attached to it. Yes, that will not change. We'll continue to use that, but the front end is basically, that's the part which has changed. That, there, I believe when you get back home, basically, they will be there. Depending on how short your flight is. But that's a good question. The question is if the kit will take more into account virtual platforms. It is possible to test on virtual platforms, but we haven't decided yet how we're exactly going to be using those requirements on that. That's still an open question at this point. Exactly, exactly. So the gentleman points out if you test power management capabilities on virtual systems, that of course doesn't work very well. So that's still going, we're still going through those.
How does your team sync in or collaborate with the Windows assessment test or like the velocity, like all those other tools that?
Yeah. Another great question. So the question is, for those who haven't heard it, how does our team sync up and work together with the assessment tools, or as they used to be called the velocity tools? There are two different approaches. There's engineering agreements which we need to put in place to make sure that what we collectively build works together. That is the focus of the hardware certification test kit and the application certification kit. Then, of course, it is very possible to optimize for performance, etc., and that is where the focus of the assessment kit is. So our advice and ask to you is actually to use both, and they complement each other.
You talked about streamlining the releases. So now they are aligned with the OS. The question is, an example of Windows 7 to Windows 8, there's about a 3-year time frame. So with service pack releases, would you also have major or minor releases of the WSK?
Yeah. Good question. I'll repeat it for those who haven't. We're aligning ourselves with the OS cadence, and then of course there's an OS will take, and I'll quote the gentleman, 3 years, right? And in between that is there are service packs that may come out. Right now, actually, we're not planning for change. We're actually planning for stability, but if it is necessary based on your feedback or things that you find or things that you introduce to the market that we have to make changes, that is the time that we would be doing that. But the plan is for stability, not for change. Yeah, I'll repeat the question again. Is there a difference between the ARM certification process and the x86 certification process? If you will actually, if you download the requirements and go through that, you will see that a lot of the requirements actually have listed then which operating system they apply to, and ARM is just one of those options. So from a kit perspective, it will actually treat those OSs in the same way. So you can select which operating system you're going to be certifying for, and it can be Windows 8, x86, 64, or ARM. the Windows Server catalog will continue to live on. But Windows Server program is a slightly separate program from the client program because, of course, the situation there is slightly different. But yes. Yeah, the question is how in the logo kit you distinguish between a device and a system certification. It essentially starts with the selection of the test. There's a list of tests basically which apply to a system certification, and then there's tests which apply to the device level. And in the kit you can make that selection. It's probably the best way to figure that out and go see that is actually go through the hands-on lab and just try that out. Yeah, so the question is if the requirements, or when basically the requirements will be locking down. We did our best effort basically to make sure that what we publish to you right now is really, really, really close to what we think are going to be the requirements when we get all done basically. But it's very possible that one of you will come with feedback and something that we just haven't considered yet, and we would like to invite you actually to give that feedback to us. But you should consider them really, really, really close to what the end result is going to be. It's a good question, but it's also a really hard question because the question is when will it be final, right? That's because, as I said, there will be things that we just don't know about or feedback that you have not provided us yet, which we didn't consider yet. And it would be hard for me to say, well, without knowing all these things, I can still commit to that. I think by the time we get to beta timeframe, you know that the operating system itself will be much more finalized, and I think by then we should have a much clearer picture of which of the requirements are absolutely final, and which requirement we still have some questions which we need to close down on. But at the moment, I'm not expecting to see huge differences, but that depends on the feedback you will provide us. Yes, so the question is if you you can navigate through those screens actually to get to the test, etc., and then how to see that linkage between the requirements and the test. There's actually multiple ways of doing that. If you read through those requirements documents, you will read a lot about that, but also in the kit itself actually that will be visible about how that works. In the release of the kit or of the? Okay, then I want to talk to you and understand what feedback you have on that.
About the requirements, I submitted a bunch of feedback on the requirements talking about the May, June timeframe we ended up with that. Some of the issues that I logged were totally without any comment as by design or whole thing. I'm curious if I want to follow up and ask why or what other recourse I have, how I go about doing that. That's the first question. The second question is a link to the server presentation about the requirements. And you said read through them very carefully and understand which ones apply to server, which ones apply to client. Is there any way that can be clarified a bit more within the requirements so that it might be a little easier to skim through and say, oh yeah, okay, this one applies to the server and client, and this applies to the client.
Yeah, so there's two questions actually. One is if feedback has been given on certain requirements, but they're closed because of by design, etc. I think that's just a discussion which we need to have between you and me, basically, to go because I don't know exactly which requirements you're referring to, but I'm super happy to have that discussion. The second question is in the server presentation, they went through which requirement is applicable to what and how that can be clear. It's of course impossible for us to actually go through every single one of those engineering agreements here, because we'd probably have to keep you here for a week, because the program is so large and covers so much. But we're trying to do as good a job as possible in those new requirement documents to show where they apply to and where they belong. So again, if you have additional feedback on how we can improve that, please provide it to us.
I have a question about system logo. Will you have requirements, for example, to use in-box solutions for certain hardware technologies? For example, like for mobile broadband to use like class driver, or for Bluetooth to use Microsoft stack, in-box stack, in order to get system logo.
Yeah, I understand the question. So the question is, again, if the system logo will have requirements for certain components and how those components then should be supported by drivers. Do I translate that correctly?
I mean, will it be restriction to use only in-box solution to get a logo? For example, if I use third-party solution, I will not get a logo for whole system.
Yeah, sorry, then I misunderstood the question. Good that you clarify that. Okay, so let's take one step back. Because the goal of this is to make sure that that end user scenario is good, right? And in some cases, we think we can deliver that through in-box drivers. In other cases, that will not be possible because there's just additional specific functionality which your driver or somebody else's driver can add to that. So this is a kind of a case-by-case basis on what is possible, what we think we can support, versus what you can add to the program. The program is not designed to stop you from adding functionality or adding innovation to the product. But we do want to make sure that those three goals which we had in mind, great end user experience, seamless process, those are the top goals which we have in mind. That's how we look at those, which direction we should be taking, either supporting it through inbox drivers or supporting it through additional drivers. So there's not an easy one-size-fits-all answer for this.
But it's not, it's possible that some of those kind of things will be locked to inbox solution.
It is, yes, it is possible that we believe that for some solutions, the best solution is to use inbox drivers. That is correct. It's a bit hard for me to see those. Sorry. Yeah, I'll repeat the question. The question is, in the Windows 7 timeframe, we had definitions of different form factors. You had a notebook computer, ultra portable, desktop, server, etc. And in the Windows 8 timeframe, we're looking at these end user scenarios. We try to really simplify the approach which we're taking in the Windows 8 timeframe. So we only actually have two categories which we defined within products. One is the tablet and the convertible tablet, because those are products who will be used in different type of scenarios. They will end up in touch-only type of scenarios. And then we have all other products. So that should become a lot easier, basically. So everything is basically grouped into one thing. Again, because we believe that end users buy products that fit their way of using it, but they're not going to be changing the things that they're going to be using the product for. But the tablet and the tablet convertible is kind of a special place because they will be used in different type of scenarios because it ends up in that touch-only solution. Nope, it's an option. Sorry, I'll repeat the question. If it's in an all-in-one, if touch is a requirement or not, and the answer is no, that is an option. That's, you decide, basically. Okay, with that, we have 22 seconds left. I'd like to thank you very much.